but really it's more like pointing the camera at Brendan Fraser and saying, look at what a gross fatty this guy is.
Yes. Listen to him chew.
Right.
So Darren Aronofsky's back, and so is Brendan Fraser with a lot of latex. It's The Whale, which got a standing ovation at the Venice Film Festival. Do we join that crowd? Tell us about it, Christy.
We don't. Because
spoiler,
I kind of hated this movie, actually.
Yeah.
And yet it has some excellent performances in it. So that makes things complicated.
People are amazing.
So perhaps you have heard of this. Brendan Fraser plays this reclusive, shut-in college professor. He's an online writing professor, and he weighs about 600 pounds. And so he spends his days indoors in this cramped, squalid apartment somewhere in Idaho, teaching from behind a black square because he has disabled his camera so his students can't see what he actually looks like. And so we hear him when we first encounter this character. His name is Charlie. And just to hear Brendan Fraser's voice again is so great. It's so like there's that rich resonance to it. There's kind of a playfulness to it, a warmth. And so it's good to see him back in any form after several years away from Hollywood. And so that part of this story I appreciate. It's good to have his presence back in some form.
He was good in Soderbergh's No Sudden Move, but it was very
yes,
small.
He is. That's true. Role. He was in that as well. So, it's about what happens over the course of several days as he deteriorates. He's already extremely obese, and people come and go from his apartment. For somebody who is so reclusive, he's got like an open door policy, right?
There's a lot of traffic in there, yeah.
It's really busy for this small town in Idaho. So among the visitors over the course of a week are Chau as his longtime friend and nurse who comes to check on him and tells him increasingly that he's going to die. Like he's got congestive heart failure and his blood pressure is crazy high and he's not doing anything to change that. His estranged daughter, played by Sadie, stops by for the first time in a long time. And they have kind of a prickly relationship. She is understandably still bitter that he left her and her mom when he came out as a gay man. And a lot of the story is about how he's still working through that. But she keeps coming back. And then there is this very earnest but insistent church missionary played by Simpkins, who is not from the Mormon church, but some other intense kind of cult-like church. And he keeps coming by because he feels like it's his purpose to come and save this guy. And I hate this movie because it is gawking at the grotesquerie of this figure beneath the guise of sentimentality. Yes. Right. It's pretending that it actually cares about him and his spiritual redemption and his impulses and his instincts. But really, it's more like pointing the camera at Brendan Fraser and saying, look at what a gross fatty this guy is.
Yes. Listen to him chew.
Right. As he is like, ordering 2 pizzas a day online, or he is, shoving a meatball sub in his mouth with such alacrity that he nearly chokes.
Yes.
It's him Googling congestive heart failure while like cramming candy bars in his mouth. Yeah. And there's no kindness or interest in understanding that drive, why he is a compulsive eater, why he is destroying himself. We get the backstory as to why, but it just feels like tacked on. It's more like, ew. And like we can watch from the comfort of the theater between polite bites of popcorn and ginger mints and tisk tisk and go, ew, isn't that gross? I'm glad that's not me. That's my main takeaway. And Darren Aronofsky is notorious for putting his actors through the ringer, right? Whether it's Jennifer Connelly in Requiem for a Dream, or it's
Natalie Portman
in Black Swan, or Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler, or Jennifer Lawrence in Mother. It's like a rite of passage to have survived a Darren Aronofsky film. But there's artistry behind those stories, and there's a point in the provocation, I feel like. And here it's just like, ew, gross. Like, and the script, it's based on this play. It's Samuel D. Hunter.
Yes.
Adapted his own play, and he wrote the screenplay. And it's so clunky and it's so on the nose because its running motif is about this this student's essay on Moby Dick.
Yes.
And about how that's how he self-soothes when things get panicky for him, is by reading from this paper that means so much to him and speaks to him. And at one point he's shirtless. He stands up shirtless because he has like gotten food all over himself or something. He's lumbering toward the bedroom with his walker and reciting this essay about the white whale as we are watching this enormous white figure try to navigate the cramped apartment. Also, it's so dim all the time. Like you'd never know that Matthew Libatique shot this. The great cinematographer who was Darren Aronofsky's longtime collaborator, has shot like all of his films. Everything is so dim. And it's also shot in Academy ratio to feel more claustrophobic. So everything is so dim and so cramped as to like make us feel that tension. And I think the point is just to point and stare.
Yeah. I'm reminded that there was Little Britain, some British sketch comedy show made fun of like those sort of reality shows that would pretend to be compassionate about people who had this or that medical condition, but it was all like, take a good long look. That's what you're getting. This is a freak show. Brendan Fraser is wearing a fat suit like a costume and not like makeup. It's just this thing that is over him. And putting aside the idea of like, should they have cast an actual, a morbidly obese person? I think more to the point is, if you're going to cover somebody in that much latex and that much prosthetics and all that stuff, maybe get a great actor who we don't know, because the whole time you're just looking at Brendan Fraser being, in the sausage fingers and with
encased
shins and all this stuff. Yeah. And it's like, and I never stopped seeing Brendan Fraser covered in stuff to play a fat guy, and listening to him chew and watching him sweat and all of that stuff. If the playwright adapted this from the stage version, I think that process took 10 minutes, because we never get out of that apartment. And not in a way that like, there's that enclosed feeling. Like I was talking about, William Friedkin is the king of stage adaptations where you are in the room like with Bug. Those people. Yeah. Bug, Boys in the Band, Killer Joe, like you can smell the sweat. This movie, it's just like, I think it's just to sort of accentuate that this guy can't even get out of his door, fatty, and there's no emotional anything to these characters, even though like, yes, Hong Chau lands these moments along the way. Sadie Sink is playing a monster, and a monster who the movie decides is an accidental, like, good person or something, like that. She does something terrible, something kind of good comes out of it, and the movie pretends like, oh yes, she was great all along. It's like, no, she stumbled into accidentally maybe doing something helpful for somebody, but the character is terrible.
But that relationship between her and Ty Simpkins is interesting. It has sparks and feels like a whole nother movie.
Kind of, yeah, but like ultimately what feels like, oh, they're sort of forming a bond, just sort of feels like, oh, no, she's just manipulating him and like getting him to confess things to her so that she can then use that against him, which is not in and of itself a bad thing, but it just doesn't, what does this have to do with any of the rest of it? And
I thought she was really good though. It's a good casting because her eyes look so much like Brendan Fraser's eyes.
I guess. I mean, look, everybody here is committing to the bit, like this, whatever's wrong with this movie isn't Fraser's fault. It's the fault. It's in the writing, and it's in the directing, and it's in the overall presentation of this character and what we're meant to take away from him. But Fraser is, if it weren't for Fraser, think of how much worse this would be, because he is such an empathetic performer, and he has those really expressive eyes, and like that gives this movie a humanity that is sorely lacking in almost all other departments. We should also mention Samantha Morton, who's so great, and She Said has a good scene here as well, but none of it is enough to make this anything but repellent.
Yeah, he brings more warmth and decency to the role than is afforded him on the page.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. No question.
Yeah. And Hong Chau is really good. I mean, just, again, there are these moments that are like frustratingly good and have potential, but overall I just found this leering. And I don't get people who are like, oh, I was sobbing, I was blubbering. Like, why? No emotion rings true. This is so hollow. This is so false.
Yeah.
So maudlin.
The whole thing about the Moby Dick essay is such a contrivance. And then the reveal of it is even worse, So it went from a dumb thing to really, movie? This is
That's
what we're doing?
It is.
Yeah. So
I'm saying 3.
I said 4, just because, again, I think the actors are really trying to sort of fireman's carry this thing into something, but they're undercut at every turn.
If you guys see The Whale, let us know, because it's very divisive. So check it out and let us know what your thoughts are on it.
It'll probably get award nominations.
Oh, I'm certain of it. He'll get a Best Actor nom and he'll probably even win. So